you could literally never have played Legacy in your life, print off a deck, proxy a deck within the rules of the proxy of the proxy, sort of how you do it, and you can take that printed out deck essentially, win a local tournament with it, and then win an invitation to Italy, potentially win that tournament. Hello everybody, welcome to a new episode of Battle Chads. I'm Josh, one of the co-hosts, and with me is Luis.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we've got a very special guest today, someone who you might hear before you see them. Sahar, how you doing?
I'm good, Josh and Luis. I'm excited to be here. I guess we're talking about my favourite format today.
Yes.
I'm excited. I've even got my cool magic jacket on, so I'm fully branded.
Oh, I just noticed that actually. We've been talking about 5 minutes already. I've only just noticed you've got a magic jacket on.
Attention to detail, Josh. Attention to detail.
Know, yeah.
That's what you're known for.
So you're not one that needs many introductions, Sahar. However, for the avoidance of anyone who hasn't met you before, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name's Sahar Mirhadi. Yes, Josh is right. You can hear me before you can see me at most events. I am I'm going to call myself an eternal format enthusiast. I play Legacy and Vintage predominantly. I am a co-creator of the Legacy Gambit, a YouTube channel aimed at creating fun and accessible Legacy content with my co-host Sarah Grenham, aka Granger Bob. She is an absolute queen. In addition to that, I am also the UK representative for the European Legacy Masters, a big European-wide tournament series and invitational that happens in Italy in September. What other hats do I have? I've also recently been part of the Magic Online Creator Program, so going to be creating a lot more Legacy content in the future. And in addition to that, my main sort of passion is to increase accessibility and representation for Eternal formats, because I definitely have seen it more in Standard, Modern, and Pioneer, but I think in Eternal formats we're a little bit behind. So whatever I can do to fly the good flag and get people excited about the older cards, I will do. And other than that, yeah, I'm just like, I'm a woman playing Magic the Gathering, like everyone else. I love the cards, I love the community, and yeah, I'm excited to chat Magic, really.
We're excited. So if you want to, when we first started doing this podcast, you were like, I was thinking of a list of people we could invite, and you get excited, and I think you were in like the top 5 people that.
Oh yeah, Josh instantly said it. Oh, we have to have her on. This is the Legacy person, my favorite format. We need to have her on. Oh, he was dead excited.
Yeah, I've realized over the years that I have definitely become like Legacy mum of just like I'm just hyping everybody up. I'm hyping myself up. I'm hyping other people up. I'm like, let's go. Just like flying the good flags.
So today's pod, we are going to talk about Legacy, but it's not going to be talking about. We can talk about the meta a little bit, but what we want to do is focus this podcast on community, on the format, how to get people playing the format, the ELM, and also a little bit of controversies within that format, particularly around the reserve list and use of proxies. So hopefully this is going to be a really good conversation, because the pre-brief we had, me and Luis had between us is, or what we talked about was the whole proxy debate initially, and it was good to see that Luis is on one opinion and I'm on another opinion, and hopefully it'll be a really good sort of conversation for that. So, what is ELM, Sahar? What is it?
Oh, so many people ask me this question. Like when I first,
what does it stand for?
What does it stand for? So the European Legacy Masters, the way I've described it now, is a collection of 23 countries who basically came together and wanted to create effectively I don't want to say tournament series, but effectively like a qualification system for an invitational. Yeah. The kind of inspiration point was myself and Luke, who is the other UK rep for the ELM, and he is also sort of leads the coverage, leads the social media side. He basically does a lot for the ELM. we were at the Four Seasons event in Bologna, which is a quarterly eternal format, like extravaganza in Bologna. And we were there, and we saw that the Italians had a system where all their leagues across the country fed into this sort of 64-person invitational in June, and then they would crown a legacy champion for that year, get a nice trophy, get some prizes, all that kind of stuff. And I remember talking to the Italians who were organizing that, and along with another gentleman called Tom De Decker, who is our co-chair and sort of leads it for Belgium in terms of the reps. And we were like, hey, have you ever thought about expanding this like outside of Italy? And they were like, no. So, I mean, I know a bunch of people would want to play at it. And so that then the conversation led to kind of like, oh, well, what if we, if a bunch of people qualify from each region, then we could have this big invitational at sort of the end of every year. So effectively, it's an invitational series where a bunch of qualifying events happen across these 23 countries. And then we have a big tournament around September, typically, to then decide the European Legacy Champion. That's quite simple, really. Currently, we don't want to make it too big, so kind of like we sort of took the PT, kind of level, and we're like, let's work to that, obviously on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
And I think the cap we've always said is we never want it to be more than 8 rounds, so it's always the cap is 128. So and I've said to them that's a limit, not a target. When I was kind of working kind of a lot more in the ELM, I've stepped back a tiny bit just because priorities in life, but I'm still very much involved and kind of make sure that stuff happens and all that kind of stuff. But it's an invitational series to crown the European Legacy Champion. We've had a Slovakian one year, which is Samuel Sajarek, and then we had František Juda, who is a Czech guy who had only started playing Legacy, I think, for about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And then
was he in the mono black Beseech?
He was the mono black Beseech, the mirror deck with 4 copies of Beseech Storm. The weekend it came out, because one thing that we've been quite passionate about is the certainly for events, just the use of proxy friendly environments, which we'll obviously get to, and making sure that the accessibility to Legacy isn't hampered by that. And sort of, it's not a sanctioned event, so we can kind of do what we want in that respect. But we do have sponsors. So we've had Ultimate Guard sponsor, we've had Card Market sponsor us, 3-for-1 Trading, the big Austrian store, Borsa MTG, who are a big Italian vendor who who sponsor our trophies and our play maps, which are beautiful. And there's a lot of work that happens. There's people who look after the qualifications, there's people who do the coverage, there's people who look after the sort of graphics and stuff, the social media. It's a whole enterprise
Of course.
of people, which is a lot. It's like we kind of started as committee and we still have that committee vibe, but then there is groups of people who make sure that the stuff gets done and the qualifying events happen, and people
just to explain one thing as well for the listeners and viewers. Not everyone knows what a sanctioned event is from everyone that's listening. A lot of people are newer to the competitive scene.
Yeah.
So when it comes to sanctioned events, sanctioned events are things that are held by Wizards of the Coast.
Correct.
They're the ones who can sanction an event. If it's not something that Wizards has sanctioned, it means that they don't have anything to do with it, no say in it whatsoever. Nope. So for example, when you go to play FNM at your local game store and it's a WPN store, that is a sanctioned event. That's why you can't use proxies there, for example.
That is correct.
Whereas the ELM is not a sanctioned event because it's not in any way connected with Wizards.
Nope.
And this is what allows them to do a lot of the kind of rules and settings that they want to set up for it, which is very cool in and of itself. And that's why it's separate from something like the Pro Tour or the RCs or anything like that. Just so you're aware of what a sanctioned event is.
Yeah.
And I added to that as well, like when we're talking about ELM, the spin of ELM is the fact that it is 100% proxy friendly. So you could build a proxy. There are rules to the proxies. They've got to be in color. There's rules into, so they're not how to call it, marked.
Yeah.
But you could literally never have played Legacy in your life, print off a deck, proxy a deck within the rules of the proxy of the proxy, sort of how you do it. And you can take that printed out deck, essentially, win a local tournament with it, and then win an invitation to Italy, potentially win that tournament, all with a deck that you spent the price of however much it cost you to print off a deck.
Yeah, 100%.
With printer prices
that's
these
the
days, so printer ink is expensive. Let me tell you.
But that's the spin of ELM, and that's sort of like the unique aspect of that. It gives someone who wants to try Legacy a focus, essentially, and give you a reason to play Legacy. Because I look at Pioneer, for example, and I'm convinced. I mean, Lewis might disagree with me, but I'm convinced Pioneer wouldn't exist if there was no reason to play it. If there was no tournament structure, cause why would you pick that format to play? But that's my personal thing.
No, that's my medium take is I want, the fact that it is a competitive format that you can play is the reason why I think that event survives. But on the point about the proxy friendly thing, yes, a lot of we have, that has been a big value system for us, and I've seen obviously the CDH community, similar kind of vibes in terms of trying to get themselves out there and be a kind of recognized format. But they also have accessibility challenges also. But I think for us, the one good thing with the Legacy community, and I cannot stress this enough, is the generosity of the Legacy community is actually unfounded.
Yeah.
Like if you said to someone you'd met playing Legacy, hey, I want to play in an event, for example, they'd be like, cool, what cards do you need? And we're not talking like Lightning Bolt and like Delver Seekers. We're talking like Dual Lands and Force of Wills and Wastelands. Like I have borrowed Delver, I've borrowed lands, I've borrowed these like very expensive decks because all Legacy players want is other Legacy players to play with them.
Yeah.
So even at the ELM, as much as yes, that is 100% you can do. You definitely have the kind of camaraderie of like, hey, I'm missing like these cards, and someone will be like, sure, I'm going to bring my entire collection, and be like, and certainly as a committee, certainly a lot of the committee members are very open to their opening their collections to players. I am someone. My Delver deck, bless it, it gets out occasionally. I don't play it that much anymore, but anytime somebody wants to play it, I'm like, sure, here you go. And they're like, you sure? I'm like, well, if you lose it, you're going to pay for it. And they're like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, okay, here you go.
So
here's my name.
let's turn this serious now, because I've got a point to that, or a question at least to ask. So, do you think the Legacy community is quite renowned within the game to be quite inclusive and quite friendly, and there's a uniqueness to the Legacy community, and it's one of those things you can use all these little buzzwords like friendly, but there's something unique about the Legacy community, and I wonder if that uniqueness is there because the amount of passion you have to basically buy into this game, or to the amount of work you've got to put in to buy your deck. Do you think that's the reason why? Because it's a passionate, I don't know, community, and not you want players, but it also takes a lot of effort to get in there.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I think that a bunch of us just want more players.
Yeah.
And I think I'll give you a bit of history lesson for people at home. I started playing Legacy because I left Modern. I was a Modern player for the longest time. Hogak Summer came in 2019. I was like, absolutely not. I was playing Scapeshift at that time, and that deck was bad in the Hogak Summer meta. And I was like, I don't want to play Modern again because I do not want this ships in the night format that's just happening. And my friend was like, do you want to play Legacy? And I'm like, I've never played it before. I assumed at that time that it was a boys' club, and it was very pretentious, and everybody was just flaunting their dual lands everywhere. And they were like, no, it's fun, just try it. And I was like, what deck is it? Is it Nick Fit? And I'm like,
oh God,
excuse me, what? What did you say? It's like, yeah, you have Cabal Therapy and Venture Explorer, and then you ramp into Fatties. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I do in Commander. So we're playing Nick Fit mirrors at GP Birmingham, having the best time. And then finally, I went to Callum Smith, who's one of the kind of leading members of the Legacy community in the UK, and I was like, okay, real talk. What if I want to play Legacy? What deck do I play? So you learn Delver, you pick up Delver. That's the deck you want to play. And lo and behold, I picked up Delver. I had friends who lent me the cards, and then,
now it sits in a box in your room. Fantastic.
Now it's in a box in my room, living its best life. And that's sort of, I feel like with the Legacy community as well, and I feel like with getting for me, as doing content, what I do is I just want people to get excited by it. You have to have the moment. I started learning Legacy when Ren and Six and Ochre were legal in the format.
Oh boy.
Red and Six and Wasteland. No,
Oh, I had the best time. It's amazing. But I got hooked. I feel like every player needs that hook. And if the passionate players can kind of be like, be as excited as we are, and being open with their time, their generosity, resources, you only have to look on social media to see just Legacy players offering their time and insights and all that stuff. I have slid into so many players' DMs and gone, hey, I don't know what your deck does. Can you tell me? They're like, sure. I was like, wow, that's exciting. And I feel that in more competitive formats, that will have either got paywalled or Patreon, and that's fine. People need to make money. But I also feel that a bunch of us are slightly older. We've got, we don't get to play it as often. So when we do, and I think Josh is right, we've spent money to get into this, into buying all these old relics. And we're very. I remember when I first got when I traded for my first dual land, I was like, oh my god. I'm so excited.
That hook is real though, because my first when I first moved up to Cumbria, they were very much Legacy focused, and I was like, oh my god, I've just got into Modern. Now you want me to get into Legacy? And it was Legacy wasn't as expensive as it is now. But I proxied up Infect, and that was, I remember going effing right. I've got Infect. I sort of know what it does, and I went 3-0, and I was like, oh my god, this is everything I want to do in Magic.
For the viewers at home, if you have Josh mentions Infect and Legacy on your bingo card, stamp it now.
Yep. I was about to say, I watched the podcast stamp when Infect gets mentioned. But I think every player needs that. I feel like that's why I think Legacy is like, it has these high power levels, but everything is like yes, we have formats and metas where one deck is definitely like S tier, and like I think we're in that period at the moment with like the Scaminator deck. But I feel like everyone is either thriving or adapting. Like that's kind of the vibe.
Legacy does do that. I mean, like 3 months ago we were talking about Ancient Tomb.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Those sort of decks or City Trader decks, like how broken it is, and then a deck that has always existed, has existed for the past 10, 11 months. Like there's no new cards in that deck.
No.
Has all of a sudden a rise to take the top spot in the ranks. But even now, that's contentious because the meta's evolved, and Scaminator isn't winning events like it was a few weeks ago.
I mean, from an outsider's perspective, right? I don't have nearly as much experience with Legacy as Sahar and Josh do. I know it a little bit. I have enough knowledge to play the format, just about, and I can tell what's going on. But I'm not an expert by any means. But from playing it, looking at it, and seeing how it works, Legacy, more than any other format in Magic from that I've seen, is the most self-correcting format there is. There is no other format quite like Legacy in correcting the issues that it's created, because there's so much busted things that there's also busted answers to those things, and you're able to self-correct and play that way. Every once in a while you'll get the run in 6 Wasteland problem, but not super commonly. Most of the time, it's self-correcting, and you're able to manage whatever's happening in the format, which is really nice. It's really healthy for a format to be able to do that.
The questions definitely do line up to the answers. The questions line up to the answers, and it's all about knowing, evolving as a player, and it's a format that's constantly being looked at because it is a passion format. Like people play it because they absolutely love it.
Yeah. It's, for me, I mean, Ren and 6, Ragavan. Funny enough, anything that's in a Delver shell is usually quite busted, because that shell of Ponder, Brainstorm, Delver, Wasteland, Days, Force of Will, you put that with anything. Ragavan. I mean, Ragavan was the one that, like, Ragavan, Expressive Iteration, White Plume Adventurer. Like, there's a point where we can self-correct, and then there's a point where we've done so much self-correcting that then Wizards comes in and go, okay, you know what, this is actually too much. But we can do it. I actually would say to kind of shout out another Eternal format that I think is also self-correcting but doesn't get the love is Vintage. Vintage is a lot less played in the UK and in Europe, but I feel like online that format thrives, and shout out to Justin Gennari and a bunch of those content creators who do work there. But Vintage, it's the most busted. And then there's like, they really have to self-correct. But then Urza Saga and Loris got printed, and now, that's all you do. You just play this Urza Saga card, and then you go Lauren revealed. And then, by the way, here's a cat, and then here's a Bowmaster.
Yeah, and Ponder got recently unbanned in Vintage. Big thing happening.
It did nothing. It made Doomsday slightly better. But I think with Legacy, the self-correcting thing is super interesting. I think a lot of players, what I found with Legacy as well, and I think you have this with Modern and Pioneer to a certain extent, is where you get these like format specialists. You get these people who that's their pillar, and they make content on it, and they make resources for it. But then you also have players who they aspire to be that, but they just kind of grind. They're just like modo grinders who go, oh, I made like I 20-0'd with this deck. I'm like, and then what?
Yeah.
And then what?
And
like,
then
exactly. But I think the format specialists are such a good resource to have in Legacy, because you can literally go to any deck and there's a deck Discord that's thriving.
Yeah.
There's resources that are thriving. The only one that wasn't was Initiative, and then I made one because I was like, sod it. The strong ladies need a home. I'll make the home. I was like, everyone.
It's a great point. I love watching even like the format specialist YouTubers. Thraben U and Bosch and Roll. I love watching them on whenever they play Legacy deck,
podcast.
Whatever they play. So it's so much fun.
Yeah, Brian Cook, Hello Newton.
Oh yeah.
Fenris Cloud, obviously. Josh Infect will know Fenris Cloud for Infect content.
I was one of his early followers. I remember watching his live stream. There's like 3 of us on his channel.
It's in the world. There are 3 Infect. Yeah, like Michael Mapson for devs, Ali or Mitgo for lab. Like these people who like have taken taken an archetype on their back and work to develop it. It's so good to have. And I think Modern does have it to a certain extent, but I feel in Legacy it's so pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so like.
So I think with Legacy, like you can pick your archetype, pick your deck, and that sort of rides you for essentially eternally. Yeah. But with Modern, it's becoming this rotating format. It's lost its identity. It doesn't have an identity anymore. Modern. It's basically MH, Modern Horizons.
Yeah, it's a little flavor of the few months, maybe a year if you're lucky.
Exactly.
So
we get that too.
I feel like Legacy very much has its identity, and Modern has lost that. And when you lose that identity or those pillars, like it was what was it, Faithless Looting, Mox Opal, those sort of cards. Once those cards are gone, and or those what makes the format, then the decks just sort of.
It's all soup. It just feels like soup, everything.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
It can be a little bit that way.
I do like Modern, by the way. Like,
I love Modern. It's my favorite format.
Creativity is my favorite deck. I love that deck so much. I just want it to be good.
You're a bad person.
Creativity is good. Is it?
I mean, the One Ring exists. So I look at that and go, but I just want it to,
You're a bad person. Okay. Stop it, creativity.
Before
the One Ring got printed, that deck was everywhere. Don't get me started with that.
A slight tangent and then I'll come back. The first time I played Creativity, I was at an Axion event.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I went 1-4 in a league. I hadn't played the deck in paper. I went 6-3. Because all I did is I took my scape shift brain and was just like, okay, we get to a certain amount of lands and a certain amount of things, and then we resolve this spell, and then we win the game.
Yeah, you press the muffin button, and if someone could answer the muffin button, oh well. If they can't, unlucky.
I do remember silencing an Elves player on their upkeep. That was...
That's just like, cruel. That's just mean. Oh, no, the Elves players already have enough of a hard time. That's just mean, man.
I'm waiting for Orum's Chant in MH3, so that I've got 8 silence effects, and I'm like, boom. Go.
I'm waiting for Standstill in MH3. That's what I want.
You and 2 people.
So the whole this all like paper, like Magic to me. I play Magic Online. I think Magic. I'm a Magic Online truther. But to me, when I play Magic Online, it's all to the point that one day I'm going to play this in paper, and paper is where the actual essence of Magic is for me, where I think the most skill intensive place to play Magic. It's also where it's the birth of Magic. What we said on the last podcast, 2/3 of the Magic the Gathering is the Gathering, and I feel like ELM specifically is a product of community empowerment, where a community have got together, said, we want this. Wizards, we don't feel like Wizards is supporting this, or we don't feel like Wizards is giving us what we want, so we're going to make it. And it shows you the sort of power of community in that sense, to the point where if you look at the ELM, it's not only just Italy that's happened, but it's spread like a spider's web to all these other countries, which all links to the mothership, which is this Four Seasons tournament. And it just shows you how important that community is, and how important it is to how the community should engage with themselves to get what they want out of the game, but B, how Wizards should recognize this and support community more.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping now. For us, it was never, Wizard recognition is nice, but it's not something that we, for us,
you don't need it, right?
We don't need it. No, Habibi, absolutely not. What we're looking for is just ways to professionalize it and make it more streamlined, because what is a passion project and a labor of love, you can do that once or twice, and then eventually it needs to turn into something that is a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And that's sort of our plan into next year. We've got plans to do not a rebrand as such, but sort of zhuzh it up a bit, so it's it looks a bit more a bit more swanky. We've also spoken about, yes, Italy is where our home, we have been, but that is not to say that we cannot go to other countries and have it hosted elsewhere. As just we are a pan-European series. The fact that it was so interesting how the countries fled in, because it was first Italy, Spain, Belgium, the UK, Germany, and we were like, okay, that's fine. And then the Austrians were like, well, we want in too. And then it just sort of, we started talking to people in the regions, and they were like, yeah, we can do this. I'm like, sure. Come in, get inside.
So how does it translate for the player then? Because say for example, I have never played Legacy before, but I'm really interested in try Legacy, and I now know through this podcast that I can try Legacy for next to no cost. I also want to qualify for this magical tournament that I've only just discovered.
Woo!
How does that translate to the UK player? How does the UK player go from printing off a deck to qualifying for Italy?
So the UK, the qualifying season usually starts the day after the ELM happens, which is the first 4 seasons of the ELM, which is in September, and that goes to the end of July. So you have a big qualifying season. Each region has a set amount of slots based on community size and population. It's sort of like we're fully aware that Italy and Germany have a big community, so it's sort of and Spain. We kind of divvy it out. So the UK gets 5. 2 of them were at the Axion event in October. 1 was at the Southwest Legacy Showcase. We've got 2 qualifying events left. 1 is on the 26th, which is on the 27th of April. Is it 27th? 2 days, in 2 days' time. And on Saturday in Nottingham.
That'll be in the past by the time you hear this.
Yeah, exactly. If whoever's qualified, congratulations.
If one of you qualifies because you listened to this podcast, I want to know where your time machine is.
Well, really they have one more chance, Luis. So on the 26th of May, the London Legacy Monthly, hosted by Callum Smith, are hosting the ELM qualifier in London. We tried to split it so that both we had more the previous year, but because of as people moved and up and down, we evaluate the qualifying season every year. And for us, me and Luke, who are the UK reps, were like, okay, well, we need to give the local communities and the local initiatives a chance. As you said, person knows about it, qualifies for an ELM and then goes to Italy, and then giving Axion now a chance so they can qualify at a sort of higher level. So you have this sort of more premier event, and then you have a more local event sort of level. So the way that the qualifiers typically scale up is that you have your qualifier events. So these are your, people organize them, anywhere from 30 to 70 people kind of type events. Then you have your league. Some countries have a league. So if they're much smaller, they'll have like a league system. So the Austrians have a league for over 3 months in 2 blocks, and then the person of the first league and the second league go, and then they have a couple of events to support that. And then there are some countries where if they have events that are over 100 plus, we have like a small silo of slots that go to that. So Four Seasons, for example, Impact Returns, a bunch of the big German events that seem to have like 150 people, and we're like, why is there so many of you? And so there's qualifier events, but those are we call them premier qualifiers, but that's more just because anyone can qualify. Matt Brown secured one from 4 Seasons in December when he won 4 Seasons. So we're like, yes, come,
give me that back.
We've I say stolen slots. This is like a banter thing, but there have been Matt and a guy and Nico, who's a young and up and coming sort of grinder, for want of a better phrase. Went to Belt. We were
That's
at
not the app that you frequent, Luis, by the way.
Yeah. We're talking about the player. We're talking about people who go to they go to RCQs, all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about that grinder. He was at RC Ghent, and on the Sunday he came to the Belgian Legacy event that was also a qualifier and won it. And we're like, okay, so
I could literally go to like a different country, and win their slot and qualify.
100%.
It's an entire. It's not UK.
No.
It's like an entire Europe thing. I can come around.
100%. It's actively encouraged, actually. We're definitely trying to make it more available.
You heard it here first, guys. If you want to go to Italy and just beat them up, take all their slots, you know what to do.
Germany, the French take French slots. I guess.
You're telling the people from the UK to go take French places? Just
the
you wait.
Slots, all of them. Just take all of them. We also.
It's not Eurovision, Luis.
No. The only kind of the premier events that we have. So the first and second place of each ELM come back, so they get invited back. That makes sense. And then we also this year thought that it would be good to invite the winner of Eternal Weekend Europe to the ELM. So Juju Bean is coming to play in the ELM in September, which I'm very excited to see.
That'll be fun.
I'm excited. He's gonna just crush everybody.
So out of curiosity though, like how so it's obviously proxy friendly, but would you say most people are using Proxy Decks, or would you say a lot more people are using the real deal?
50-50, actually. The more I think about it, it's also country dependent. So I'd say in the UK there's probably more proxy friendly, but in some countries it's I think Italy for one is probably a good example.
The Italians love their legacy.
They love legacy.
The only reason I ask is because I think it's quite interesting to see if it's just the legacy players who are playing this, or is it actually injecting new blood into the format?
I think it's injecting new blood. Sorry to interrupt you, Josh.
Yeah, no, you crack on.
Yeah, I think there is new blood, and I think in the UK we definitely have. I've been flying the good flag, as I said earlier, but I think in some countries you are seeing that more, and I think it is just dependent on like how the communities work. Like each country does their own thing. We are like an organizing committee, but each region kind of runs their qualifying seasons how they want to run them. But we actively encourage people to go to TOs and have proxy friendly events. Obviously, if you're going into a WPN store and playing events, that's going to be a bit more challenging. There are definitely some countries where that is an issue, but there are also countries where, like I know for Luxembourg, who are a recent addition to the family, as I call them, Luxembourg, it's in a guy's house. He just has a massive house that he just has like 50 legacy players show up and they do a tournament and it's
amazing.
Lovely. I love that. It makes me so happy.
That's so cool.
Exactly.
Imagine that going to some guy's gaff. Oh yeah, come around mine, and it's a mansion.
It's exact. I mean, it's more just he's got like a barn. I think he's got like a converted barn or something. But it's amazing to see, and I think a bunch of the stores have been very supportive because obviously it's just new blood. It's just new people into their stores. So I think each of the regional stores, so 3-for-1 have hosted them, Mjati in Belgium, MTG ones in Lyon, like a bunch of these clusters of communities have kind of galvanized back together. Some more slowly than others, and there are some countries where it is still a challenge. So some of the Nordic countries may have so Finland is a good example. Finland, their community is pretty strong, but it's very disparate because they've got people in Tampere, they've got people in Helsinki, and like a few other places. So they have Finnish nationals every November, and that is their one big event, and then they send 4 people from the top 4 to the Finnish nationals. So I think like the national system is like a way that you can definitely do it if you're a country where it's like we need one big event, everyone turns up, bish bash bosh, we're done. Whereas some countries it's more like a bit more fluid, and the more slots you have, the more room you can work with. And it's definitely grown communities in that respect.
So we're talking about, I'm just going to plug someone who a listener. His name's Tom, and he's been invited locally. He's been invited. Trying to invite us around to his house. He's got a big house in Ennerdale, apparently. I've not seen it yet, where there's enough space to fit everyone. So Tom, I promise one day we will come play Magic at your house. But on the proxy side of things, have you received any? Because I always look at the Discord on Twitter and stuff like that, and there's a massive polarized debate between proxies. Should we allow proxies or should we shouldn't? And it's massive. It's a massive divide, I've noticed. Have you received any negative sort of, I don't know, pushback or comments or anything from more so the community? Because I don't understand stores. Like, we'll talk about stores later on, but stores are governed by rules, and they can't have the WPN status taken because that's bad for business, etc. But from the community, have you received any negative? Because I know Luis has got an opinion on this as well, and I've got an opinion on this. But do you have you received any negativity from the community for proxy events?
No. So I say no, and kind of like it's sort of no question mark. So I'll elaborate. I think that the reason why we have proxy guidelines is I think initially, you don't want a Sharpie, Caracas Sharpie. So it needs to look like, especially for us for coverage, it needs to look like the card, on a sort of glance view. Like
the biggest thing as well is like, can it be can it be marked as well? That's probably a big thing.
Yeah, exactly. Can it be marked? I mean, so the ELM has judges. It's not just us turning up and going things like that. No, Four Seasons very kindly give us a head judge every time and judge staff, and we have tables. It's run like a high level event. We're not just kind of like rolling up and being like, do what the hell you want. Like it's run at we run it at Comp REL. The Invitational is run at Comp REL. The qualifier events, I kind of go like sort of I would call it like not regular rules enforcement, but sort of don't be silly, like don't try and like
RCQ level enforcement. It's just Comp REL, just slightly. It's not pro REL, but
exactly.
I think Callum Smith did it, explained it in a really way. It's relaxed to an extent, but if there's information gained, there's no takesies backsies.
Exactly. So I like the way Callum does it. I feel like that and Callum, bless him, has been very honest and open about how he's run the London Legacy Monthly for multiple years. He has given his advice out to people.
He gave me advice as well, because we ran one last year, if you remember.
Yeah,
we only had about 12 players for it, unfortunately, but we still ran one, and Callum gave me loads of advice.
Yeah, Callum's great. Shout out Callum Smith. I will stand Callum. But I think that it's interesting in comparison to the Americans and the Europeans. The Europeans, I feel like, because there is there is more Legacy being played in non-store or TO settings.
Yeah.
So people running stuff in bars or where it's not
Mansions.
just like a mansions,
movie
they're not running it at LGS. They're not running it at LGSs or like TO events. The premier events are all competitive rules enforcement, no proxies. Like Four Seasons, it's no proxy. You have to play your cards. But I think because that movement in Europe, certainly in Germany, certainly in some other countries, I think that has make it more accessible. So when I speak to my friends across the pond, who the only way they play Legacy is in a store, and then I talk about proxy friendly. Although shout out Buffalo Chicken Dip Legacy, for having props. I love. One of my legacy bucket lists is to play in a BCDL event. Just to be like, I want some buffalo chicken. Just want to play I want buffalo chicken in one hand, my cards in another hand. Live my best life. But I feel like when
Don't
I talk
mix them though.
No mixing. But I feel like when I speak to them, they're like, well, it doesn't make sense for us because how are we going to play Legacy in that way? And I get it, and I really do, but it's an accessibility thing that I'm like, but surely you want players to play. And like, yeah, we've got decks that we can borrow. Some people don't want to borrow decks, and I completely respect that. Like, they don't want to have the responsibility of holding what is effectively a cost of, a high-level computer, a very high-end piece of jewelry, in the
Car.
a car in some playing land. You forward out your deck, it's a cost of a car. If you're playing lands, it's a cost of a car. Like, these, stuff costs money. And I think that's the mentality. I think if you're used to playing in stores, that makes it more like, that's the expectation you have.
The Discord I've seen is mainly with Commander, and I think people take it like on a personal thing. Like, I've bought this card, I've invested in this card, and then you get someone rocked up who just printed it off, and I think there's a personal element to it there. Luis, you're from sort of like a non-legacy sort of. I know you've delved in Legacy. I remember when we played Legacy not long ago. It was great fun. But what's sort of your views on this?
So, in the overall view of proxies and that kind of thing, I always played without proxies in just about every event I've ever played. I been at a WPN store the entire time. They're simply not allowed. You can't play them in a WPN store. That's the rules. Otherwise, that store suffers. Wizards punishes them for not following the rules, and it's fair. It's correct. That is how it works. Now, when it comes to just wanting to play the game at your own kitchen table with friends or whatever, I don't care. Do whatever you want. That doesn't matter to me. When it comes to competitive level things, I try to keep those separate. I don't like mixing proxies with them because it takes something away from the game for me. And this is for competitive, right? This is how I see it. Now, the thing with Legacy and the ELM for me is Legacy is a prohibitively expensive format. Like it or not, it is. When a single card is going to cost you, it's very good, but it's going to cost you a third of your month's salary for most people. That is not acceptable. You can't do that. So that's why I'm a lot more lax when it comes to the ELM and their proxy rules. It makes a lot more sense to me. There's no reason you can't have a competitive format if you have no players. You can't do it. So why would you just eliminate the ability to have players by doing so? So in that sense, I'm okay with proxies. I don't mind. Modern is expensive, but not even close to expensive as Legacy in that kind of thing. So that's why for Modern, Pioneer, and all those other formats, in competitive settings, I don't want proxies. I don't want them anywhere near them just yet. If it ever gets to that point, hopefully not. We'll have that conversation then. But when it comes to Legacy, if Wizards is going to keep the reserve list, if they're not going to help get a cheaper way of playing the game out there, this is what it has to come to. There is no other alternative if you actually want to play the format and play Magic, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. You want to play the game.
So I was speaking to someone, an LGS owner out of, I'm not going to mention the LGS, but out of the Midlands somewhere. And they were saying that they had quite a distaste for the use of proxies, and he felt it like it was, for him, like as part of the secondary market and how he made his income essentially from the secondary market. The use of proxies means that, well, there's no point in me buying this deck, or there's no point in me buying this. And if I can proxy dual lands, or why can't I proxy my Force of Wills, or why? And if I can't, if I don't need, if I can proxy my Force of Wills, then why can't I proxy my Shock lands, or why can't I proxy this? And essentially, there's no big tournaments locally, particularly in the wake of like COVID and stuff, when there was no, the Wizards changed how you qualify. It made it it's a bit weird. It made it a lot harder. There's a lot less meaning to it. I think from that sort of perspective, that sort of, well, this is how I make my living, and the the use of proxies is a threat to that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I saw get that, but at the same time,
Oh, it makes sense.
I don't like the fact that secondary market exists. And
Yeah, I mean,
Wizards-
it is a bit of
Yeah.
a rabbit hole, Pandora's box kind of style thing,
Mhm.
because if you allow proxies, you can't just say you can only proxy cards that are £500 or more, right? You can try and say that, but it doesn't really work that
So
way.
one of the methods I've seen in the past is the fact that you can have they run legacy events, but you're limited to 10 proxies per deck,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's probably enough for the land base, say, or your some moxes or whatever you want to you're playing, your mox diamonds or whatever. And that I can sort of see that, because for me that's like a nice halfway point between those.
Yeah.
Between you can try your format, but there's an investment in there, and I think a lot of the time, and I do think that there is the reason why the legacy community, and I might have mentioned this before, why the legacy community is so unique is the fact that you've got to have this initial investment, and time and money is the same as time, and money is work, and you've had to put work and time into getting this deck right. And it's part of that experience within that legacy space or the legacy sphere is everyone's there because it's pure passion. And if you didn't have that, if you didn't have that sort of passion behind it, then the whole experience is not lost, but it's watered down. And the use of say 10 proxies per thing per deck means that you've still got to buy your Force of Wills, you've still got to go out and buy your Brainstorms, your Daisies, you've still got to go out and buy your fetch lands. But when it comes to as Louis said, your £500 individual cards, which are £2,000 a play set, sure, proxy that, because
Yeah,
that is unreasonable.
It's the same. It's the same in actually. Again, I shout out an old format. Vintage is sort of this. Like this is where vintage, in terms of paper vintage, has had it's struggled, and it's like, okay, well, how do you get people to play vintage that aren't going to put the card in the house, unless
What do you
you're
mean?
old, had the cards since time
Do you
immemorial?
not have a Black Lotus just sitting in
No,
your
Habibi.
house in your folder?
No, if only.
No, Habibi.
No, Habibi, I don't have a black lotus. I've held them many times. And I know people who own them. But I think that if it gets to a position where whether it's with the ELM or with competitive Magic, generally for Legacy, where Wizards go, okay, you know what, like 10 limit proxy, and we can give the proxies to you, whatever it may be. Whether it's the dual lands, in the case of dual lands, mock I'd probably just be reserve list cards and just be like that I'd be happy with that. Like I mean I bought my dual lands, but I am the person who got excited and then was like, I want to own my cards, and then have spent the majority of my Legacy career slowly but surely picking up bits and bobs. And I have like half a mono red deck, half an initiative. I got my City of Traitors, I got my Ancient Tombs, Chalices, that kind of stuff, to kind of renew my membership for the mono red club. Same with my Delver deck. I remember when I bought my final dual land for Delver, my fourth volcanic island. This is where I know Italians are a breed of their own. One of the Italian players who lives in London was like, I have just come back from home. I've just come back from being with my parents, and I found a box, and in it was a tropical island, a volcanic island, a tundra, and a plateau, and a bay.
Wow.
Does anybody want them? And I was like, I got you. So that was my like big investment for my final dual land. But I traded a bunch of stuff. I traded a Guy's Cradle to like get my dual lands and like stuff like that. Like, and I bought my Guy's Cradle when it was relatively cheap, because I started playing Commander, and I was like, oh, this card's kind of cool, and it was like £50 at the time, and I was like,
£50.
I know,
oh
right?
My gosh.
Yeah, like it's now. Ooh. Same with when my husband bought his Lion's Eye diamonds for like, for him it was like 300 for the playset, and this was like
wow.
And now they're like
300 piece. Yeah.
So when I was first looking at Legacy, I was looking at LED Dredge. That was the deck I was looking at.
Of course you were.
And
yeah.
LEDs were £60 each, and I was like, oh, that's expensive.
Exactly. Exactly. I have LED Dredge downstairs. But I think that the debate about players who play proxies won't necessarily buy into it, I think is a little bit, I'm not going to say shallow, but I think it's
disingenuous.
It's also a bit reductive, because I think a bunch of the players I know who have have proxy events. Like I'll take Sarah. I'll take my co-host Sarah as a good example. Sarah, the reason why she plays proxy is like, you know, it's a accessibility thing. It's kind of cost. The cards are expensive. She wants to play Painter, and you know, for her, it's a way to still play paper Magic. But this woman is a fiend in the Magic Online streets and is playing, you know, playing all the legacy money, you know, like that she can basically play. Same with Vintage, and she can still get that kick. But then in paper, you know, I remember this is something where I feel like my network and me, because I pride myself on being the fixer and knowing people who know people who know people. So a good example of that is I remember at the last Axion in October that I was at, and I was borrowing mono red for myself, and I sourced a deck for Sarah. She wanted to play Death Shadow, and I was like, I know someone who knows someone who knows someone. Good deck. Folks, if Josh has talked about Death Shadow in previous episodes, please put that on your bingo card, because Josh also a big Death Shadow fan. He hasn't spoken about it. Josh,
yes, he definitely has.
That's to say, has Josh spoken about? Just talking about Death Shadow.
So, let me tell you about Scam Reanimator, Scaminator, so good. Blue Black Scaminator.
I'm a blue black gamer. Moonlight is a blue green one, but
exactly.
You mix them together, you got Bug, right?
Exactly. All these are good. But yeah, borrowing Shadow for Sarah, and I was lending out my Delver deck to a lady called Olivia, who never actually good point. She was a modern player, a modern Murktide player. Top 8 at one of the events, and then
I think I was at that tournament when she did that.
Exactly. So she was like, Sahar, I know you play Legacy. I've never played before, and I want to play the Action event. I was like, of course. Here's Delver. You know, it's basically like Murktide. And she basically like went like 2 and 5, but she had the best time going 2 and 5, and she was like, this format's incredible. Yeah. Everyone's lovely. The gameplay is amazing. I want to play more. I'm like, yes, that is exactly what I want. And if I can make that available to players, and that's why for me the proxy movement is so important, is that you need that as well as the competitive setting to hook people at different levels. Because if you hook them at like one level, then they go, oh, I'll play another thing, and then I'll play this thing, and then they may play a qualifier, or they may go to Axion, and they'll, you know, it all balances out. And I think that the generosity of the community, like I know for a fact that if I could rally a spreadsheet of all the spare decks people have, we could fund like a 200-player event, no questions asked. Like maybe not 2, maybe 150.
I think it's what literally is that legacy sort of experience came from. I don't know what to try. You know, I'm not gonna obviously you're not gonna pick up a deck and try it and then think, I don't like this, I'm gonna sell it, because it's such a big investment. So you proxy that deck, as I did with Infect back in 2019. It was when I first got into Legacy, played it, and it was literally like that. Oh my god, I've woke up. Oh, this is what I want. This is what I've been searching for. This experience.
Let me tell you, the first time you cast your Ponder, right? The first time you cast that Ponder.
For me, it was Delver Wasteland days.
Yeah.
Oh
God.
It was you know what card it was? It was Brainstorm. I was like, what is this card? What is this?
Yeah.
No, you know what it was? Brainstorm, and then I realised, hang on a second, if I just fetch now, then those 2 cards I don't want are now new cards.
It blows my mind that Brainstorm is a card in this format. Even now, and I've played with it forever. Days is the one. For me, Brainstorm Days, these are the 2 cards I'm like, you know what? My format's cool.
Yeah.
But I think that with the proxy thing, that there is people who get hooked, and that builds the community.
Yeah.
But I think there is enough community players who have decks, who have played Legacy forever and ever. Like people have been Legacy for like 10 plus years at this point, who just have cards when the cards were cheap. And those people are good to know, because you then can kind of, I want to say like call on them, but you can always be like, hey, I need to borrow this, or I need to borrow that. And they're like, of course, like that sense of generosity is so important, because all we want to do is play.
And a big thing, right, with everything we're talking about, to everyone that's listening and you know has some interest in Legacy. You might be a grinder who's played Modern, Pioneer, and does all the RCQs and all this stuff. While Legacy isn't currently an RCQ format, doesn't mean that you can't have competitive Magic with it. Because we are primarily a competitive Magic podcast, and this is competitive Magic. This is competitive Magic doesn't have to be only things that Wizards say is competitive. It can be literally anything that has a player base, that has people that are willing to play and are playing with stakes on the line. That's what competitive. That's what competition is,
and structure as well.
Exactly, and structure. That is what competition is. And if you want to try Legacy, this is your calling card. There's a lot of people that are looking to have you come and join them.
What we'll do is we'll put the ELM website on the show notes.
Yeah,
and then you go there, and all the qualifiers that you can.
We've just updated it. Well, if it's not updated, it'll be updated by the time this goes up. But certainly, that's all we want. And the good thing in the UK is that we actually, so around, I want to say a couple of years ago now, the UK community was very disparate. So it was very kind of like chunked up into different regions, and each region kind of did their own thing, and we were kind of siloed off. And around sort of 2022, a bunch of the community heads all kind of came together. We're like, why don't we just have one Facebook group rather than 4? And we're like, I never thought about that.
You might be onto something here.
And then Callum brought everyone on board, made a bunch of them a bunch of the community heads admins.
Can I? Is this the UK Legacy group on Facebook?
Yeah.
Do you want to know something?
What?
That was a bit my idea.
Was that?
I was the one who spoke to why have we got South and why have we got North? I think I said to Callum or someone, and then obviously he's the one who did it because I don't have the sway that he has. But
or the technological ability.
I'm not going to say like, oh, look at me, like I did this, but that's it.
I mean, and also people, and a lot of players from like other countries go, "Why are you all in a Facebook group?" Because I'm like, Habibi, our players are old. Our players are old. Our players are dads with kids and responsibilities.
Facebook is what is to me. The social media apps I use is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Twitter is for deck techs and new technology with Magic. Facebook is for events and pictures of my child, and Instagram is for you don't know what my Instagram is. It's I keep that separate.
God.
Instagram is my time.
That's absolutely fine. You can do whatever you can post your first traps. I don't mind. But I
don't hurt me, Eleanor.
That's
my girlfriend.
Shout out. I mean, to be honest, my thing as well with Legacy, and I do this with like all the formats, is that I'm also someone who hypes up my boys because unsurprisingly, competitive Magic is still very male orientated, but all my boys are great. All my boys are great. They're fantastic. But I have something I want to kind of touch on very quickly is about inclusivity. And one of the challenges I had when I started playing competitive Magic in Modern and in Legacy is, I'm usually I was for a long time the only woman who was playing, and you would have, I had it definitely Modern, like back in the day Modern. Playing like 2015, 2016, and you go, oh, did your boyfriend make you that? You're playing Bird. Oh, I can teach you how to play it if you want. And I was like, I'm gonna slap you so hard. And then all the boys who would try and flirt with me because I was the only woman that they needed their life.
Who had the best riz out of everyone?
Exactly. Just so much, But then then you had the players who were just, they're like, oh, I've never played against a woman before. And I'm like, what does that even mean? I get that still to this day of like, oh, I've never played against a woman before. I don't know.
This is the first time I've talked to a girl, so it's kind of crazy.
So normally I take it as a joke and take it as like as a thing, but like definitely, the one thing I've definitely taught, or I've tried to be open to my fellow players about, isn't the kind of like bold, like emboldened statements that you hear. It's the small stuff. And I remember one of the sort of tournament grinders from the States wrote an article about this as their experience as a trans lady and sort of, playing in tournament Magic. And she said, it's not so much the out and out stuff. It's when you sit across from your opponent and you look in their eyes and they think they've beaten you because they're playing against a girl. And I remember talking to fellow Legacy players who've been playing for many, many years. And I was like, be honest with me, has that happened? And they paused, and I was like, exactly. And they were like, oh, I never really thought about it like that. I'm like,
So
case in
I've got a story. So I've got a story with this. Not me personally, but is from my girlfriend Ellie back in GP Birmingham back in 2018.
I was there.
Me too.
I was there playing Hogak.
I got whomped by Hogak.
I was playing Scape Shift. I went to the side events. I was like,
Eleanor was very heavily pregnant with our son at the time, so she was very heavily pregnant. She was a girl with her own seat, so she had a special seat that she wouldn't move because she had to have access to toilets or whatever.
Yeah.
It's also her ankles were like swollen, all that,
Yeah.
proper. I think she was about 7-8 months pregnant, right? Heavily pregnant.
Man.
She was playing pauper side events all weekend. There was a story where a guy sat opposite her, probably thought, "Oh, this is a buy." He started doing trading mid-match, and then Ellie went, "Well, elves, go," and he was like. So then he got a bit like, oh, antsy, lost. Then he was like, oh, put his cards away, got a bit thing, and she then offered the split. I think it was the same game, but she offered the split, and he said no, because in a GP, the side event, if you get 2 wins, it's better to you both split the third match, so you get equal prizes.
Yeah, exactly.
But he said no, so she ended up 3-0 that tournament.
Yes.
So she finished that day or that weekend with about 3 boxes of Magic under her arms. This pregnant lady waddling away because all these lads probably thought, "Oh, pregnant. She's got a seat in the corner next to the toilets. Oh, this is a buy for me." And she just absolutely whopped everyone.
My story in GP Birmingham is I got beat by I don't know her name. It was a woman. Round 1, Hogak. I got slapped silly. Absolutely obliterated. It didn't help that I was playing Burning Inquiry against Hogak. That was a really bad choice. But I got absolutely whopped.
Oh, I get schooled. Actually, talking of Ellie being pregnant, one of my like bucket lists is to play events whilst not too pregnant, but like pregnant enough to have a seat. Get a pillow. Get like a little pillow. Get to have a side table with some grapes and some water.
The fact that's on your bucket list.
I want to do that. I just want I just want to have that like in the corner, or close enough to a toilet, but just like a pillow, get a little footrest, just like playing my cards. I'm ready to do that, and I've told all my boys who I go out to events with regularly, like, when that happens, you have to look after me. They're like, we got you, Sahar, we got you. I'm like, but it's definitely like, as soon as you said Ellie crushed them, I was like, thank God.
She absolutely. Oh, she came, I think it was. Actually, it might have been 2.5 boxes of cards. Honestly, I remember underarm waddling.
Just living her best life.
And at the end of the day, right, there was a GP, I think, before GPs stopped being a thing. There was a 7-year-old girl, I think she was, that day 2 to GP. Listen, absolutely anybody.
Yeah,
exactly.
One of my
sorry, go on. No, go on.
One of my small, I would say claims to fame, but I think I'm one of few women to do this. So at GP Bologna, the last Legacy GP, I was the only woman to go undefeated that day.
Ooh.
We don't talk about day 2, but just day 2 is but I was the only woman to go undefeated.
How many people were undefeated that day?
4.
Right, okay.
It was insane. Out of like, I don't know how, it was like many hundreds, 1,500, 1,300 people or whatever. It was, that day was absolutely bizarre. I've got so many stories about it, but that could be saved for another time. But it was. I'd been playing Legacy 3 months at that point, because it was at GP Birmingham in 2019, and then the big GP Bologna was in the November. So like less than 3 months, and it was absolutely insane. But I think that in terms of going undefeated in like 9-0 or like X-0 for day 1 for a woman, it's like very rare. Yeah, so
it's rare for anyone.
It's rare for people, just any person.
Let alone me.
So I think being inclusive is very important, because if you look at it from like the brass tacks of it, if you're as inclusive as possible, especially if you look at from the ELM sort of things, if you're inclusive as possible, that means you've got more players to play against. And if people feel comfortable coming to play in your tournament, you're you've got instead of having just lads or blokes or whatever, then you've got, oh my god, now we've got access to women to come play with us, and all the other spectrums of life that there
You
is.
couldn't have said that in a
I could
worse
play
way
with-
with the excitement and the
I
look in your
normally say-
face.
I-
Oh
yeah.
my god, we have women to come play with us.
There's women. There's a woman playing the game. Oh my god! Everyone, calm down.
That
There's
was
a
the
woman
worst
here.
way possible. You could have said that, Josh.
The
But yes, the point
You
is
know what I mean,
understood.
though, right?
The point is
We're saying it with
understood.
There's more
like-
people playing my game.
Yeah, there's more people playing your. Yeah, normally I say like no. So when I'm talking about it, is I normally say people of marginalized genders. I'm trying to throw the biggest arms possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find it like. So there was a. I remember I remember Twitter, like the when Reddit posts get through to Twitter of like, well, this every topic pictures like 6 guys and a trans lady and someone. I'm like, what? Where are all these events where these trans ladies are doing? I want to be at that event. I want to be at that event where that lady's crushing. But for me, it's like the inclusivity. So I remember when I started playing against Legacy, there was like maybe like 3 or 4 people, like 3 or 4 people of marginalized gender playing, and now it's like 10 to 12. I actually had a bet with the French at Eternal Weekend in Europe. I was like, how many people of marginalized gender do you think are playing Eternal Weekend, the Legacy main event for Eternal Weekend? And I was like, it's going to be less than 10. And they were like, we'll go above it. And I was like, okay, if it's above it, I'll buy you a pint. And in a field of like
the British way of going about
exactly in a field of like 700 players, I think it was like 55,
Wow.
which is again that's
a high
it's
number.
still, yeah, exactly. Again, I would wish it was higher, but and I was like, okay. And we're not all just playing Death and Taxes and Mono Red. Although in my case, I was playing Mono Red, but
Of course.
but we weren't just all playing.
Women don't play Death and Taxes. They get more class than that.
I mean, that's also true. But I've definitely, like, for me, it's just so nice seeing more people of marginalized gender playing Eternal formats. Same with Vintage. I remember the reason with Vintage, for example, the reason why I started playing it is because I watched the Vintage Super League and I saw Rachel Agnes, who now works for Wizard, playing Vintage. And I was like, that's very cool that a woman, she's a very beautiful woman, playing Vintage and crushing everybody. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? You just want more people to play. That's the end goal. You want people in numbers to just be higher.
Wally is.
Everywhere.
Ollie, you get it.
here.
Yeah, and I think this definitely with the more, obviously you've got people who are playing from all competitive walks of life, and they might look at Legacy and they'd be like, oh, it's not that competitive in focus. I'm like, when I sit down to play a Legacy event, everyone either knows the rules, they know the stack, they know how everything works, and if they don't, they know someone there who does. And that is so rewarding to just know that everyone knows how to play the game. Because there's a lot that's going on.
There's a lot of cards in Legacy.
I wish at the Legacy, like you can have these like grindy games of Magic, but essentially the Legacy have big turns, right?
Yes.
The turn that pivots the game or that decides the game essentially, and it's those turns that is like, oh, get your heart rate going. It's like, even if you come out on the losing side of that turn, you're like, oh my god, that was amazing.
It's one of the coolest and most interesting things to watch as a spectator as well. It is really interesting to watch a Legacy turn, or the pivotal turn play out. It's not the same as something like Standard or Pioneer, where it's, I played a big dude, can you answer my big dude? No, haha, get wrecked.
That still happens.
It happens, but in Legacy, there's just so much going on the stack.
Someone say Traxon. Someone say Children.
And it's a much flashier kind of thing, which I think is very cool for the spectator, and really interesting for the players because there's a lot of interactions.
Yeah, I think it's so important as well to recognize with Legacy. Very small segue, and this is for all the modern players out there who come to play Legacy. I went to play Modern and Tournament, this is a couple of years ago now, and I went to an FNM, and I was playing Murktide, and I played against an Esper Control opponent who just taps out 5 mana to play 5 mana to Fairy. And I look at him, I don't have force negation, but I just look at it and I go, you have never played against a free counterspell in your life. There was no fear. Like every Legacy player or anyone who has watched Legacy content should be aware that there are free spells. And I think in Modern you have that I'd say to some extent, but just the idea that just tapping out, not even respecting, like Days isn't even the format, but in my head I am respecting Days at all levels. I'm like, just like, make sure I still got mana free. In Modern, I still do it in Modern. I'd like tap out. I'm like, Days isn't even in this format. I'm still like, make sure I've got my mana flow.
Mana tithes get wrecked.
It's mana types, but it's so.
If I get got by that card, I'm just gonna hand my card.
New life goal has been administered.
Exactly. But it's for Modern. I think some people might. I think in newer Modern players might be more aware of it with like Leyline Binding and Solitude and the Pitch Elementals, and I think that might be more prevalent. But that's something to be mindful of. The first time you get, the first time you get wastelanded, or the first time that you get dazed, or the first time that your spell doesn't resolve, like that is going to be a potential feel bad. But then you understand, oh, we're all on this level. Okay, this is
Brainstorm lock.
The first time you get turn 1 Doomsday. Yeah, nothing quite like it. It's fantastic.
Arbitral Doomsday, that happens. The first time you lose the Storm, like these are just rites of passages that we take, and then you play against like, Maverick, and then they sit there with a Knight of Reliquary, and you're like, how am I dying to a Knight of the Reliquary is beyond me. Or Death and Taxes, where you're like, I'm dying to 2 1s and 2 2s, and they all do something, and they all shoot to each other, and I'm like,
or even 8 cast. Oh God!
So we spoke quite extensively about like the Eternal sort of magic and Eternal Scene, but when you look at like Eternal Weekend, it's a massive weekend twice a year, is it, or 3 times a year?
Eternal Weekend is once a year.
It's one in Europe, one in North America, one in Japan. Is that right?
So there's 3 locations of Eternal Weekend. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's one series.
Yeah.
Where does Pauper lie within the Eternal community?
It is an Eternal format.
It's never mentioned though. Like, I know it's got a massive following at the moment, particularly in the UK. It's actually getting quite big.
Very big.
Yeah, very big. But when you look at to me, when I think Eternal, I think Vintage, Legacy, Pauper, and that's the Eternal formats, right?
Yeah.
But Pauper's never really mentioned when you with these sort of tournaments, particularly when you look at like Eternal Weekend and that sort of stuff. Why do you think that is?
I think Paupergeddon is sort of
its own thing, isn't it?
Yeah, Paupergeddon's its own thing. Again, 700 players playing Pauper is wild to me.
Mental.
Again, the Italians. But I think with Eternal Weekend, because I think Pauper is more easily accessible to play.
Yeah.
And it's
Legacy Light.
Again, Legacy Light. I've played Pauper, I like it. And there's, especially online, you can play it very cheaply, with a certain exception of a couple of cards. But I think for Eternal Weekend, it is sort of, how do I phrase this? It is Wizards' love letter to Legacy and Vintage. It's like, okay, here is your event, here is your weekend.
Yeah.
You can also play Modern there as well. Like, you can still play Modern there. And you can play pre-Modern and old school and all that kind of stuff as well. But it is effectively the love letter of, here is the Legacy and Vintage Championships. And I think that's important because we kind of still need that.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that Eternal Weekend came back and everyone was very happy. Yeah, I mean, some of it wasn't perfect, but for me, that's the sort of the pilgrimage, for want of a better phrase, I want to take.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I get
It's just like, and I loved it. I'm planning to go to America this year. If nothing else, to just frighten some Americans of just like, hello, this is very loud British lady walking in, just like in my dungarees, just like, hello everyone, and just like throw kind of show that. But I think that's for us important. I think for Pauper, I think they should still have that. I think there's the Pauper GP or something of that ilk.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like Wizards. The thing is, they have the Pauper format panel, and I
wish Legacy had that.
So, okay, I'm going to say one take on this, and then that's my take. Okay. Is it depends who you get. I said this when it first kind of got touted around on Twitter. There is a difference between being a custodian of a format and being good players in the format. Because you cannot have your format panel be all the good players. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that warps it to the winner's meta rather than it being about fun or being inclusive or whatever.
Yeah.
But you also can't have it all be content creators because they're doing it for entertainment.
Yeah.
So there's this balancing act. I have some ideas of who I would want on it. Obviously myself. Look at me. But like Anurag Das. Like for me, Anu is a good example of like a mix of both. But it's a hard thing to do. And again, because Wizards, I know there's people in that building who love Legacy. You can tell. And I think that they, with the ancillary products feeding into Legacy, some people, there's a lot of players in the player base who find that frustrating. That's like one of the, actually, outside of like the proxy debate, one of the biggest tensions in the community at the moment is the fact that everything feeds into the card pool, and a lot of older players struggle to keep up with that because it's constant. Like everything that gets released, you have to look at it and be like, is this Legacy playable?
Including Commander content. Hooey.
I mean, that's also like, it all feeds into this. It feeds into
Cheers
the
initiative.
I mean, I had a lovely time.
Hello, Fallout.
I mean, but fortunately, I'm kind of hoping now we've kind of seen initiative kind of with the fallout of initiative. I think that the Commander products recently, there hasn't been much. Like the 40k cards had some stuff, but for Doctor Who and Fallout, there's been some stuff, but it's not like Lord of the Rings where it literally upended the entire format.
The real issue that they're facing with these other formats, like supplementary products, is the fact that you're not getting them on Magic Online. I mean, Fallout's not coming on Magic Online, so the paper legacy meta is different to the paper legacy card pool is different to the one online. So you can't.
It's very possible you would have had something from the Fallout set if it was an MTGO. There's just so much
Lumbering
more testing
Mega Sloth for Dark Depths.
The Wild Wasteland, like these are a bunch of. But I think it's sort of interesting because I feel like that debate is also something that is a tension in our community. And that's something that gets brought in. I mean, the Sticker Goblin implementation is like a very good example of like one's different to the real thing. And I think these are all like strains on something that is actually quite good and happy. But you can feel it. Like I feel it all the time. You just kind of, again, social media warps it because it's, that's things like, but you can see that it's like, okay, you put a little bit here, you put a little bit there, and the goodwill and the passion of that community can only go so far. But I also can't, the problem is you can't really blame Daybreak and you can't really blame Wizards. It's something that just, maybe, I'm not going to say blame Wizards, but they just didn't think about it. Like it just wasn't like that conversation, and that's whatever, bad negotiations, God knows. But like I think that it is the widening card pool is a long-term issue, but I think that I'm not at the stage where I'm actively worried that the format is going to break or like completely dissipate. But it's something to watch out for. It's a tension in the discussions from the community, but it's not something that is ultimately going to break Legacy in half or like discontinue the format because we're still frightened.
Thankfully, even with all these products that come in, we can still play competitive Magic with your proxies.
Exactly.
At ELM.
Exactly. And I think the reserve list debate is obviously something that kind of comes up every time, and they go,
so the reserve debate is one of those things that like people will shout in the air about it, but I don't think it's going to change. I'd like it not to be here, but it's not going to change. It's just as
Snow Jewels, when?
There's no, yeah, that's it.
Snow Jewels.
I think we're going to wrap up now, Sahar, because that was a really, really in-depth conversation about Legacy, the best format.
Yeah, every day of the week, number one.
Luis, I know
Legacy's not your biggest thingy, but
it's not my knowledge pool, right?
But you enjoy the fact that you could if you wanted to proxy up a deck and play at a
it is fun
level.
to play. I have played enough of it to know it's fun. It's an interesting thing. I think competitive players should give it a try, even if it's just to try it at least once. And if you like it, fantastic. If you don't, fair enough. It doesn't have to be for you.
Not everything is for you.
Yeah.
ELM gives a focus to your testing. You can test for legacy with a focus for a reason and to be competitive.
Just DM Josh or Sahar. They'll play against you, no problem.
I will happily play. Someone's play legacy with me. I'm happily taken on board. But yeah, definitely give it a go. There is a bunch of people in the community you can like reach out to. We just want you to play. That's the end of it, basically.
And there's a lot to take away from everything we discussed, and I hope you guys have all enjoyed the conversation, everything that's been going on. As you can see, we could probably talk about it for a very long time. Well, some of us more than others, but it's one of those things. I hope you enjoyed this. I guess look at Legacy, look at ELM, and the competitive side of it all, and how to even look at events in a non-wizard sanctioned way and still see it as a competitive format that you can enjoy and challenge yourself and grow as a Magic player. Because that's ultimately what all of us want to do. We want to grow as Magic players and be better than we currently are. And if you can find other ways to do it, why not try them, right?
Yeah, 150%.
I want to thank everyone for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as well. Let us know when you become the next ELM champion as well, if we were the ones that helped you get started on your journey. Take care, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye,
Bye everyone.